That's right, you've read the title. I will openly and proudly state that I think WOTC's doing a fine job. Now, when I say they're doing a fine job, understand I know they're far from perfect and they've definitely made their fair share of mistakes. I'm not in a rush to get the company logo tattooed on me or become a level 100 bootlicker. That's just against my core principles. No big company is your friend, but as far as big companies go, WOTC could do a lot worse. Now, before I continue, let me just sort of state where I'm approaching this stance from. Like I just said, no big company is your friend. At the end of the day, you're at best a customer and at worst a statistic to these corporations. There's a nearly bottomless history of big business doing anything and everything to squeeze out every ounce of profit. Ethics be damned. And I'm a big believer that a company is naturally inhuman and will do anything to maximize earnings unless the law literally forbids them to do so. If you disagree with that statement, I'd recommend cracking open a history book. So when I'm comparing my like or dislike for a certain company, understand the bar is very low, and my like for them basically means I trust you not to mess up this transactional relationship up or be evil. Now, for those who don't know, when I say WOTC, I mean Wizards of the Coast, who owns Dungeons and Dragons at the moment. And Wizards of the Coast is owned by the even bigger company Hasbro, which you know from IPs such as Transformers, Barbie, basically your favorite childhood toy. They're part of it. So my video is going to be primarily focused on Wizards of the Coast, which I will refer to as WOTC because Wizards of the Coast saying that over and over and over again gets annoying real quick for both of us. Now, I don't play Magic the Gathering or any of their other properties besides Dungeons and Dragons. So this video is concerning WOTC and how they handle Dungeons and Dragons. So expect this video to be D&D focused, Dungeons and Dragons focused. Now, for those who are here for the D&D stuff, don't worry, I will leave no scandalous stone unturned. I've been tapped into the news just as much as you have. First off, when it comes to D&D, the biggest argument I hear against WOTC is how money hungry they are. And for this, I gotta be honest, they kind of suck at being greedy. They do want to make a profit, as any business does, so they need to release products. On the Magic the Gathering front, I will say, I've heard about them releasing a ridiculous amount of new card sets on a multiple times a month, sometimes basis, and that sucks. They definitely need to address that. However, when it comes to D&D, there's really only one way they're monetizing the hobby, at least for the moment: books. Books for player options, books for campaign settings, books for monsters, books for modules and adventures. It's all just books, really. Some of that's changing with the to be released sometime in the near future, for sure. Just trust me, man. First party virtual tabletop, aka VTT, but I'm not really here to speculate on what could be, but rather what's right in front of me. It's just books. Sure, one tends to come out every few months, and that's hardly an aggressive schedule. And the new edition is finally coming out after the greedy WOTC waited a very short 10 years. Oh, and it's backwards compatible with the prior edition? Wait, and it's the first edition to be backwards compatible, right? Wow, that's pretty greedy, guys. You got me there. Aside from the core 4 of the Player's Handbook, the Dungeon Master's Guide, the Monster Manual, and Tosh's Cauldron of Everything, you don't need to buy any other book ever. And if you really want to be frugal, you don't need to buy any of those books, since the actual 5e standard reference document, aka SRD, is in the freaking public domain under the Creative Commons license. Do you know how insane that is? Let's go back a little bit. So the OGL scandal happened when, after almost 15 years of keeping the original open game license agreement of allowing third-party publishers to basically have free reign, they updated it. They proposed a behind-the-doors update to the open game license, which would have required permission to make products and a royalty. They got backlash, which, in their response to the backlash, they did something unthinkable. They put their core IP into the public domain under a Creative Commons. Do you know how insane that is? Compare that move to what any other big company would do. Sure, the OGL change was a big mess up and endangered a lot of third-party businesses, but keep in mind, the only reason this third-party ecosystem ever existed in the first place was because WOTC allowed it. You know what? Why don't you try asking an Apple or a Nintendo or an Epic Games or Warner Brothers if you can make a third-party product of their IP to sell. Let me know how that goes. I think TTRPG players live in a bubble that pretty much hasn't been popped since the 80s. A bubble where you should be able to take someone's IP, make a product of it, and sell it. A bubble where you don't have to pay the original company a royalty or even ask for permission to make the product. You can just do it. Before D&D, I was, and still am, a huge fan of esports. Primarily Nintendo esports. So existing in that sphere first really showed me how bad it is out here and how good you guys have it in this TTRPG bubble. Back when I was a super fan of the whole Nintendo esports thing, it wasn't common to see tournaments stopped, canceled entirely, sometimes at the last minute, because Nintendo just said no. It was pretty normal. It was pretty normal not being able to run paid or free tournaments of modded versions of games because Nintendo said no. Par for the course. What's that? You want to monetize a fan product you made for their game? Good freaking luck. I think I'll bet my money on the snowball rolling through hell instead. And it's not just Nintendo. No, this has been the norm for, well, as long as like modern business has existed. I can't think of any medium besides TTRPGs where unapproved, commercially sold products that require no royalty to their original IP owner exist. It's an anomaly. Outright. Even the cool and chill and well-liked companies like Valve won't let you release a third-party product of their IP without permission and a royalty, albeit a small one. Now, I hear you through the screen. It's the norm for TTRPGs. I get that, which is why I'm in this space, which is why I'm astonished that WOTC was able to keep that in place to protect that right from evil overlord Hasbro, who would happily steal candy from a baby if they could sell it back to their mom. Going back to the OGL scandal, to correct their temporary overstep of the OGL scandal, they did the unthinkable to modern society. They put the 5e SRD, the standard reference document, into their Creative Commons, permanently enshrined as a public resource for anyone to use and access forever. You can't undo that. Again, do you know how insane that is to do, especially in modern capitalism? We've got companies like Disney fighting both tooth and nail to keep their 100-year-old characters out of the public domain, and WOTC just gives it to us. They could have just undone the OGL changes, but they took it a step further. And they took it a step further because, and this is going to make a lot of people angry to hear this, they care. Wizards of the Coast cares. I honestly believe WOTC cares about their products, about their customers, and ensuring both their long-term sustainability and keeping their customers satisfied. If they didn't care, they would have just told us to suck it up. Like literally every other company charges for what we've been letting you do for free. And they still would have remained the #1 TTRPG by a large margin. They could have just weathered the storm, but they didn't. In less than a month between the leaked and the OGL, again, it was never officially announced, they entirely reversed their OGL decision and then made it free in the Creative Commons. A 30-day turnaround for a massive decision. Again, when looking at the quality of a company compared to their peers. And all this for committing the original sin of wanting to be paid royalties for an IP they own. A truly devilish desire that no other company asks of. Now let's take a look at a few more scandals, some notable ones. I'm not going to get them all. Let's talk about first the AI art scandal. Some books were found to be using AI art. WOTC fixed that immediately. They removed the art, they replaced it with human art, and they pledged to never use AI art again. Now, they did accidentally use AI tools for a Twitter post a few months later that was promptly deleted, but their claim is that Photoshop did that on its own. And as someone who actively uses Photoshop, it is getting harder and harder to dodge all the AI-assisted tools it tries to shove down your throat. But consider they only messed up on that promise once so far, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt on this one. Next scandal, the problematic Hadesy race in the Spelljammer setting. Now, Spelljammer was created in the 1980s, and there were some things that were translated for the modern edition that, well, didn't age so well and should have been filtered out earlier. For those of you that don't know, the Hadesy race is a monkey people race, and as far as their lore originally states, they were a race of enslaved people. Do I need to explain why that's a problem? Now, after the fan outcry, they edited them out of the book. And this is a really lose-lose situation where you can't please everyone. The problematic elements were removed. Awesome. But they also removed content that was post-release. And some more mature themed table would be okay with tackling. But I get why they made that decision. It's just not content that's appropriate for a wide audience, especially one that tends to lean towards family friendly. On to the next scandal, sort of a mini one. Well, it's actually a pretty huge one. But they removed the abilities to buy select portions of a book. Maybe you only wanted the new subclass from the latest book release. Well, now you have to get the whole book. This sucks. I can't really defend this one. You can't win them all, and WOTC clearly lost the battle on keeping the a la carte feature. Again, no company's perfect, and they're definitely not your friend. All right, the scandal of paying YouTubers to do a sponsored video of your product. Come on, guys, seriously? What rock did the angry people crawl out under? This is as white bread and as harmless as it gets. To pay a content creator that covers your products to cover your products. How is this a problem? As long as it's clearly stated it's a sponsored video. This is just another example of TTRPG players living in a bubble. I strongly suspect this is one of those fake outrage scandals where only like 4 dudes total were actually upset. I just fail to see the problem here. Again, this would be normal in any other medium. Now, if I missed any other scandals, let me know in the comments, please. But I took a quick glance at the Wikipedia page of D&D controversies, and 90% of it was TSR buffoonery, the company that owned D&D before WOTC. I mean, for those in the know, did you want those guys back? Or would you rather have WOTC? Seriously though, I think we could do a lot worse. Imagine if we were owned by a Blizzard or an Activision or a Bethesda. Wait, those are all owned by Microsoft. You get my point. Do you want D&D to be owned by Microsoft? I think we got pretty lucky with the least crappy business. Finally, we arrive at what, at the time of this video, is the latest scandal. Are you tired of that word yet? Anyways, in a completely boneheaded move, D&D Beyond announced that 2014 versions of spells and magic items would be effectively overwritten by the 2024 renditions. Sure, you could access them via compendium, but your character sheet? Not anymore. Now look, I could make an entire video bashing how stupid and idiotic this decision was. Not even from a consumer standpoint, even the most money-hungry, greedy fat cat wouldn't shoot themselves in the foot this hard. You're gonna release what you know will be an unlikely decision 2 weeks before your big new edition comes out? It's so stupid. Talk about killing momentum. No, this was indefensible. And the decision was, rightly so, reversed. In less than a week, they reversed the decision and made it so your spells, your magic items, all the stuff from 2014 will still be easily accessible from your character sheet for the remainder. Even when the 2024 stuff comes out, in less than a week. That's a crazy turnaround. Again, compare that reaction time to any other modern company. When it comes to people and companies, I have an underlying principle. I will judge you lightly for your mistakes, but I will judge you harshly for how you make up for your mistakes. Everyone is prone to messing up, but it's about making it right that matters. Have you ever heard of a website called Start Playing Games? I'm a paid GM there. No, it's not an ad. You are basically able to pay to join games ran by professional game masters. Now, the reason I bring this up is because there's about 1,000 reasons WOTC could strike this down, but not only do they allow their D&D product to be monetized there, they've even officially partnered up with Start Playing Games a few times, and I don't see any reason they won't stop doing that. And you know that big, fancy, first-party VTT they're working on? Well, while they're sorting out that thing, they've also partnered up officially with Roll20 and Foundry, the two biggest competitors to their upcoming products. Oh, and not to mention they're allowing third-party products such as Critical Role and MCDM books, Cobalt Press, Grim Hollow stuff to be officially sold on D&D Beyond, right next to their first-party stuff. Again, I'm not seeing the greed here, guys. So yeah, in a nutshell, WOTC is not above making mistakes, let me get that clear, but they've always tried to make it right, with a few exceptions where they drop the ball. They care, and I believe they care. And they spend a lot of time and resources making sure you know they care. Community outreach, being responsive on forums, on their social media channels. They let us monetize and commercialize their creations on their IPs with essentially free reign, barring a handful of times even the community thought they were right to say no. Now you may ask, why, Nerit? Why, Nerit? For the corporate shill video. WOTC cares for now, because we're rewarding them for doing so. However, as I'm sure you've noticed, dear viewer, the hate against WOTC seems to be piling up. Every week there's an outrage, every week a drama, every week a perceived mess up, a scandal. There's a lot of negative feedback towards them and very few positive. In fact, there's entire YouTube channels that make a living off making sure the hate doesn't stop flowing. I just don't want a situation to happen where WOTC simply decides not to care anymore, to become like, well, every other Fortune 500 company and adopt a F you, pay us approach to things. To go full Hasbro, in other words, if they're going to lose public favor with every step they make anyways, why not step in full stride towards maximum monetization? I strongly believe they'd lose a lot of business, sure, but they're so far ahead of second place that even with the fall off, they'd still be making a lot of money in a confident first place. Speaking of Mr. Second Place, people love to bring up other TTRPG companies when bemoaning WOTC. These guys, Paizo, aren't squeaky clean either. Paizo, the makers of Pathfinder, have their own share of scandals. From accusations of workplace discrimination to being publicly called out for underpaying artists to even having their own version of the OGL scandal, trying to suddenly revoke their 15-year-old community license for a new one known as the FCP, the Fan Content Policy, which, just like WOTC, they walked back on. So these guys are hardly angels, and they're 1/10 the size of WOTC. I don't know. In my experience, companies tend to become less ethical the bigger they get, not more. Imagine a WOTC-sized Paizo. Just saying. Oh, and quirky but lovable third place, Chaosim Incorporated, creators of Call of Cthulhu. When you consider occasions of using artist content without permission, making and creating NFTs and selling them, and hiring Mike Merles as their executive producer for RPGs after he got laid off from WOTC for what many believe is protecting a now-known abuser and sexual deviant. He also was accused of doing other problematic things. This whole video could be about this Mike Merles individual, but I'll just say, Google away and make your own conclusions. Bringing it back to the main point. If all we do is feed WOTC negative feedback, we'll be giving their overlords all their fuel that they need to push the neglect feedback, maximize profits buttons. We, as a community, need to step out of the TTRPG bubble for a moment and realize just how good we have it. Attacking TTRPG companies for doing something as industry standard as sponsoring product videos is ridiculous. if we want to protect the values of the TTRPG community, we need to pick our battles better. I believe in a strong and healthy third-party ecosystem. I believe in a strong and healthy competition between TTRPG products, and I would never want to endanger that. That's also why I believe in positive feedback to let companies know when they're doing well, so they know to stay on track. If we start an outrage over any corporate attempt to promote or advertise their products, or any attempts to make a reasonable, ethical profit, they'll just learn to tune out the noise. I mean, seriously, let some of these anti-WOTC people take up the mantle. Run the company for a bit. They'd make WOTC go bankrupt before their first paycheck clears. What's that? You want to release more than one book every 3 months? Greedy? Want to sponsor and pay a D&D tuber to cover your upcoming products? Sleazeball? Want to release a new edition after 10 years that's also backwards compatible? You're a lowlife who just wants to sell more books. So I am just here to say, in a sea of forum dwellers who consider the idea of trading money for goods reprehensible, thank you, WOTC. Others may not see it, but I recognize you're a solid torchbearer for the IP that is Dungeons & Dragons. Because I realize that for every scandal around you that's gone public, there must have been a dozen that were squashed at the root. To paraphrase a famous Futurama quote, if you're doing something right, people won't think you've done anything at all. Anyways, I'm Nearett, so you know who to flame in the comments. This is Nearett's D&D. I hope you liked the video, and even if you don't fully agree, I hope you got some sort of perspective from it. If you disagree or not, please let me know in the comments. Seriously, as long as you're civil, I'm down to hear out all sides. Until next time, like and subscribe if you want to see more. Bye-bye.